Welcome to Hometown Banknotes, where economy, bank life, and hometown spirits meet. I am your host, Janice Spooner, a local banker and proud community advocate. On this show, we will share conversations that connect dollars to decisions and people to purpose. At NBT Financial Bank, we're rooted in community, growing your financial future, and this podcast brings that mission to life. Whether you're a business owner, a neighbor, or just curious about what makes our local economy tick, this is the space for you. Remember, at NBT Financial Bank, we're more than just your bank, we're your partner in progress. Welcome back to Hometown Banknotes, where we celebrate people, partnerships, and progress shaping our North Central Texas communities. I'm your host, Janice Spooner, Regional President for NBT Financial Bank. January is a time of reflection, intention, and planning, and today's episode brings all three together. As always, let's start with an economic update. As we begin 2026, the U.S. economy is settling into a more balanced position, and inflation has moderated significantly from prior highs and continues moving lower to the long-term comfort levels that hopefully let families feel less pressure, more ability to plan, some ability to save. Even though times are challenging, it's not going to be as tough as it has been the last few years. The Federal Reserve ended 2025 with 3 quarter-point rate cuts, and markets now assign only a modest probability of additional cuts in 2026. Signaling a shift from urgency toward stability. The labor market remains steady with unemployment near mid-4% range, modest job growth, and wage increases continuing at a balanced pace. Growth indicators, including late 2025 GDP estimates, show the economy finishing stronger than expected at the end of 2025. Here in Texas, our region continues to benefit from in-migration, tourism, business formation, and community investment, reinforcing North Texas as one of the most resilient regions in the country. As we showed you last time, there are some charts that I want to cover with you again today, and it's about the green zone. Now, when we talk about the economic green zones, we're talking about what consumers are feeling, not necessarily permission to spend or borrow. These aren't recommendations, obviously, or financial advice, or simply indicators of what's going on and how people are seeing and their perspective of the economy. Inflation green zone between 2 and 3%. This reflects slower price acceleration and greater predictability. Consumer confidence green zone, as you see, 95 to 110. This reflects stability, not spending pressure. And then our federal funds, green zone between 2 and 3. You remember the Fed is really trying to get this to 2%, and this reflects healthier long-term lending conditions, but not an invitation to take on debt. The green zones simply represent balance. In communities like ours, balance matters. Supporting local businesses matters. You hear me talk about it often. But let's talk about doing that wisely, intentionally, and within each family's comfort zone, and that matters more than anything else. Today, we're joined by someone whose work impacts families for generations, estate planning attorney, Traci Hutton. Welcome, Traci.
Thank you. So glad to be here, Janice.
Absolutely. Traci helps families navigate wills, probates, trust, planning decisions that are often very emotional, can be very complex, and easy to postpone, but incredibly important to get right. So we're going to talk, and we're just going to have a conversation and let Traci give us some really strong information and advice from her legal perspective. So Traci, I'm so glad you're here. As we were sharing earlier, I had to go through this with my family, both parents dying and having to walk through how to handle their estate. So let's start with the basics. What core documents are necessary and that every adult should have in place?
So, Janice, I've been an attorney here in the Grapevine area in the North Texas area for 25 years, and my passion really is estate planning and probate to help people get through situations, life circumstances of all kinds. So it sounds like you really had a really tough time growing up when you were younger. Everyone needs a will and a medical power of attorney, a statutory durable power of attorney, a directive to physicians, and a declaration of guardian in the event of later incapacity. A myth that people have sometimes is that a husband and wife can use the same will. In Texas, they really need to have a separate will, and oftentimes it's called an I love you, or they mirror each other. So their will, everything goes to the spouse when the first spouse passes, and then on to their beneficiaries.
Can you walk us through the different types of powers of attorney?
So the statutory durable power of attorney is specifically for anything that finances, any kind of decisions regarding real property transactions, bank accounts, taxes, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, anything you would do financially that you're appointing someone, an agent, to make those decisions for you. And the statutory durable power of attorney for Texas can be a springing power of attorney. So it's effective only if someone becomes incapacitated. So example, maybe someone is in a coma, the spouse is the agent until they're out of the coma, and then years down the road, senile dementia, and maybe their next agent will be applicable. I always recommend having at least one alternate if possible. And it's interesting, it's not a conflict of interest to have the beneficiaries to be the agent, but it's so important because that financial power of attorney will avoid a guardianship in the probate courts, and no one wants that. The second one is the medical, that just basically gives an agent to make medical decisions for yourself if you're not able to, if you become incapacitated. And along with that is the HIPAA release. The declaration of guardian in the event of later incapacity is basically allowing someone to make the decision of who will be the guardian in the event they become incapacitated of their person, where mom and dad are going to live, if they're going to be in home health care, if they're going to move to another child's house in Michigan, for example. What's interesting about this document, though, is someone can actually disqualify if there is an estranged child, or if something happens, they can say, I specifically don't want this person to be the guardian of my person or estate. And the last document is the directive to physicians that says if I'm in a terminal or an irreversible condition, I don't want to be put on life support. Takes the decision away from all the family members, the husband or the wife, the children, and makes that decision for yourself.
I found that many people confuse a living will with a DNR. Can you give some information about that?
Yes, it's not the same thing, and I see that same confusion as well. The DNR is out of hospital, do not resuscitate. Very seldom people will use that. I see it sometimes in a nursing home, and it might be on the outside of the nursing home door if someone's very sick and maybe terminal or can't handle the resuscitation process. But I never recommend that for anyone. So for example, if you're in a car wreck, the paramedics get there, resuscitate you, take you to the hospital, you're on life support, but then maybe there's no brain activity. That would be a situation of not having the life support for long term.
Gotcha. All right. What should families, before they go meet with an attorney, what should they collect or prepare for that initial meeting with an attorney?
So I try to make the process as easy as possible because no one likes talking about any of this. It's difficult. It's painful, especially if someone has young children, to determine who might be the guardian for their children. They just really need, I have an estate planning questionnaire that needs to be completed. The big decisions are who is going to be the executor, meaning who will take care of the probate process. And I recommend at least one alternate, possibly two. And it's fine for children, grown children, to be the executors of mom and dad's estate. They also need to think about who are going to be the beneficiaries. Typically, it's just the children, the grandchildren, and so forth. But if there are no children, then if it's going to be another family member or charities, all that needs to be written in the will. And then who will be the guardian of the children. So the estate planning questionnaire and then the list of accounts and assets. Oftentimes, we've got documents that may have beneficiary designations, which doesn't fall under the probate process. It just typically goes straight on to the beneficiary. So we want to make sure all that's done correctly as well.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Can you explain the probate process in Texas and the difference between independent and dependent administration?
So the probate process in Texas is not terribly difficult. It is a process, though. When someone passes, they need to go to the attorney, the executor, and the original will has to be sent to the court and filed with the court, and that original will does not go back to the person, the applicant who filed. So we have the original will, and we want to make sure in that will that it's an independent administration, so it's independent executor, and that there's no bond. So the independent administration, the applicant just goes to court once, there's a hearing, the person is appointed executor, and then they have to follow up and do an inventory and sell the assets and everything. They do work with the attorney. And a dependent administration happens if there's not a will, and if the beneficiaries haven't agreed to have an independent administration. But a dependent is really cumbersome because everything has to be approved by the court. So if someone first needs to be appointed as administrator, and then if there's real estate that has to be sold, the court has to approve. The court has to approve closing accounts and reconciling and getting all the estate together. So dependent is very difficult. And if the will is written appropriately and it says independent, then that's what is the best route to go for the probate process.
What alternatives are there to probate in Texas if you don't have a will?
If someone doesn't have a will and there's not a huge estate, we can do a small estate affidavit. And that's simply a few examples I've had. Maybe a couple of them have been that an adult child has passed away. The child isn't married and doesn't have children, but there's an account at the bank or a financial account that doesn't have a beneficiary designation. So we need to get those funds to the mother and father, which is the intestate administration, how that works. So a small estate affidavit can be filed by the applicant listing who the heirs are, so long as it's under $75,000 and there's no debt involved. That's a good way to do. The court still has to approve the affidavit and there has to be an order, but then a banking institution then can use that order to distribute the assets. Because sometimes if they're not, it's at some point the institution has to, the funds escheat to the estate, to the state of Texas.
You know, I've found, and I talk often about, based on my experience and based on me seeing customers through the decades that I've done banking, is they need to have a POD on their accounts. A lot of people don't know what that is, don't have a conversation about payable on death in their bank accounts. From your perspective as an attorney, what are your thoughts?
So that is a non-probate asset because it goes directly to the beneficiaries payable on death. It's based on the contract with the bank, and it depends on each situation. So if someone has a will that they're giving to a lot of different people, then maybe that payable on death isn't going to work because they don't have all the list of the percentages to give. But if it's a simple I love you will and the payable on death is going to the spouse and then on to the children, then it's fine. And it's a non-probatable asset. It just goes directly to that beneficiary.
And it's so important because if you don't have a POD on the accounts, then the assets are frozen. And then you're struggling to be able to pay for the funeral and the emergency needs of that day. So I talk about that often from a banking perspective. Double check, call your banker, just ask the question. They can help you.
You're absolutely right. It makes a huge difference. And to have an alternate payable on death also. Do you recommend that as well?
Yes, definitely. What is a revocable trust and who truly needs it?
So a revocable trust is also known as a living trust. It's the same. It is revocable. We see someone that's a husband and wife or just an individual that has significant assets. I'm not an attorney that says everyone needs to have a trust. If houses are involved, real estate, any kind of business entities, investments, stocks and bonds, anything that doesn't necessarily have a beneficiary designation, that would be someone who would need a revocable trust. The trust is private, so there is no probate process. The trust just goes on and gives to the beneficiaries as listed. It's interesting because if a husband and wife have a trust, there's only one trust for a husband and wife, even though there are two wills. But that revocable trust then stays until the second spouse passes. Then it's distributed on to the beneficiaries. There's some people call it controlling from the grave. I like to say controlling from the clouds, but we can put contingencies in there that maybe funds are going to be distributed for adult children, a third at age 25, a third at 30, a third at 35, just so that the children don't get a huge amount upon the second spouse passing. It avoids probate. What it does not do is it does not protect against creditors, and it does not protect against taxes because it's revocable. It's still in the person's name, their same Social Security. You don't have to have a different tax ID. And that's something that some people think it's a way that they can avoid that, but that's not.
Oh, I'm
that's
so glad you brought that up. Yeah, absolutely. What's the most common regret, Traci, that you've seen in your experience from people as you've had to handle their estate? Maybe someone's called you because they didn't have it all worked out. What's that? Is there a common thread or common denominator of regret?
I think people regret not getting the will done or the powers of attorney, and sometimes it's not even, the person's passed away and it's the spouse. And I have an example. They came into the office and got the questionnaire and we completed it and they were ready to go forward and decided to go on a trip a few months later, and the husband passed. And it's really difficult if someone passes without a will, because there's another common myth that people think, well, the spouse gets everything. Not so. In Texas, if there are children from another marriage or children from another relationship and the community property, it's a complicated equation, and it makes it it's a hardship, and it takes a long time to go through that process. So I see that being a huge regret. And then also the powers of attorney, not having mom or dad get a power of attorney and then having to get a guardianship in the probate courts. And the guardianship is difficult for the guardian because there has to be an accounting given to the court every year. The court has to go and investigate the ward if the ward's at a nursing home, and it's really difficult. Those powers of attorney will avoid that. And I think some people are worried that if they do that, it will happen. And it just is a way to just get your estate plan in order. And someone told me one time that is the best way they can take care of their loved ones, is to get that in order.
Absolutely. And in all the years that I've done financing for real estate, particularly homes, they may be selling them for investment property or as a part of the estate just to be able to pay those funds out to the beneficiaries. And not having a will, then you have to go through an heirship. I'm not speaking legally, but what I've seen is through the heirship affidavit, and you said long time, and I've seen it take a long time and it stall those sales from those properties happening because they don't have that will lined out. And tracking all of those down, some may be deceased. Oh my gosh, I've seen it time and time again. Where I've had to work with the title company in that very event to track down all those people and we have to wait before we can sell and close on the loan. So get your will and get those powers of attorney set up.
You're absolutely right with that. In fact, there's an attorney in that situation that gets appointed to look for unknown heirs. And it can be really very cumbersome. I've had several cases where we've had to hire a genealogist to look for heirs, and it may be 2 or 3 people removed.
Can you believe it? A genealogist.
And the person who passed had no intention of it going to the 3rd or 4th cousin on their mother's side, example, but it's something to do, and it's just an easy thing to take care of and mark off your list.
If there was one thing you would want families or maybe even small businesses watching today about preparing for the future, what word of advice would you give them so that they can take that nugget and think about it and do something with it?
I think it's important to really just make a plan and get the estate planning documents in order that we talked about. Visit with your financial professionals, your bank and investments and your attorney, and get that done. When you do get the documents done, keep them in a safe place at your house, I recommend, or a safe deposit box at the bank. You could probably speak to that. I know banks have different requirements. And then have a list of where the accounts are, what your funeral requests might be, where you might want personal items to go to certain people, just so that it's easier for your family members, because I feel like that's the hardest part, is for people to try to honor what mom and dad's wishes are, but to figure that out. So I would just say this is a new year, and to get working on that.
I call that an I love you book.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes.
I love that.
I love you book, so that your family doesn't have to make those decisions, and they can just have less stress going through that grieving and mourning process.
That's great.
Well, Traci, thank you for being here today. It's been my pleasure. I am such an advocate about information and education. So please tell everyone where they can find you.
Thank you, Janice. I'm really glad to be here today. So you can contact me. My office is in Grapevine. My email is traci@tracihutton.com, and my website is tracihutton.com. That's TRACIHUTTON.com. Please give me a call, and I'm happy to take care of your estate planning needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, if you followed my podcast, you know that financial education is so critically important to me. I am passionate about that on all levels, from elder abuse, fraud, children and their savings, and learning what that means to save, and especially for what I call the sandwich generation, where you're taking care of your older parents and children at the same time. Please make a decision. Have your parents get with an attorney. I know every family's needs are different situations, walks of life, but make sure they consult an attorney and really personalize it for them to make it easier in case of loss. Well, we're going to switch to a very different topic, but a happy one, and that is one of the most meaningful parts of NBT Financial Banks. Really, our focus is investing in future leaders. Today, I want to recognize our NBT Community Scholarship recipient, Panther of the Month for Colleyville Heritage, Zane White. Zane represents leadership, integrity, and service, which is exactly the qualities we hope to encourage in the next generation. Remember, if you know a senior in GCISD, please direct them to our website. It's super easy, nbt.bank, where they can complete the scholarship application and get that submitted. Next month, we'll be celebrating another special senior. Well, oh my gosh, what a great time in Grapevine it has been in January. We want to extend a very heartfelt thank you and gratitude to all of our community partners who helped make our Grapevine branch groundbreaking such a special moment. It was a spectacular day, even with the rain. We're so thankful to all the community partners who helped and the neighboring businesses for their support. This celebration would not have been possible without you. Now, speaking of the branch, it is going to be completed in 2026, so stay tuned. You'll see updates throughout the remainder of the year, because this project represents partnership and trust and shared belief in Grapevine's future, and we're honored to be a part of it. And now, as we step into 2026, we do so with deep gratitude for our community, confidence, thoughtful leadership, and optimism for what lies ahead. This year brings several historic milestones. I don't know if you're all really engaged in this just yet, so let me be the first to weave this thread. From the Winter Olympics starting in February to FIFA, the World Cup starting shortly thereafter, and then our nation's 250th anniversary, each reminding us that meaningful progress is built through vision, hard work, preparation, and unity. You're going to hear a lot about goals, as we've talked about here today, because we believe goals matter at NBT Financial Bank. They guide our decisions, shape our investments, and strengthen the communities that we serve. You'll see that same commitment reflected throughout 2026 as we continue growing alongside the people and businesses who trust us every day. And speaking of FIFA, be sure to join me for my February podcast of Hometown Banknotes, where I'll be joined by Monica Paul, Executive Director of the Dallas Sports Commission, as we explore the impact and coordination involved in hosting a portion of the FIFA World Cup right here in Texas. From all of us at NBT Financial Bank, thank you for allowing us to be a part of your story. I'm Janice Spooner. Stay inspired, stay connected, and keep building something great right here together. Thanks for joining us on Hometown Banknotes. If you liked today's episode, be sure to follow, share, and like, and show someone how to make a difference in their life by understanding what's going on in the economy, their life, and in their community.